My name is R.J. Pastrito. I am Dean of the School of Statesmanship on the main campus at Hillsdale, and I teach in the Politics Department. I'd like to welcome you to our panel, the second of this morning's program on Lawfare. If you're like me, prior to a few years ago, you may not have been terribly familiar with that term. But it's one that has been brought into our lexicon by the self-described defenders of democracy that we have among us these days, who we know are in fact very busily moving our country away from what has been one of the most successful democratic regime in the history of the world, very quickly bringing it to the precipice of becoming a banana republic through a variety of tactics, which are probably known to everybody here. Trying to take one's opponent, the name of one's opponent, off the ballot. That's this kind of Soviet style. Inviting lunatics to attempt assassination of your opponent, pairing that with an incredible amount of negligence to make that as easy as possible, evidently. Engaging in a comprehensive campaign of censorship, labeling any speech that opposes the regime, labeling it disinformation, and going after it in various heavy-handed ways. And then, of course, more to the point of our panel here this morning, the jail your opponent strategy. Not only attempting to jail the opponent himself, but anyone who might work for the opponent, and even anyone who might want to give legal representation to the opponent. This is something that they wouldn't dare deny the worst criminals that we have, but they're engaging in it all the time with the political opposition. We have a very distinguished panel here this morning to lead us through a discussion of this. We're going to begin with Peter Navarro. He is one of only 3 White House advisors to serve President Trump all the way from the campaign through the end of his term. Mr. Navarro served as manufacturing and trade czar, as a labor negotiator. He then, as I think probably everybody knows, spent 4 months in a federal prison. And he did that in defense of the constitutional separation of powers. His White House memoirs include the best-selling In Trump Time and also Taking Back Trump's America. And I want to also give a plug for his latest book, which is called The New MAGA Deal, The Unofficial Deplorables Guide to Donald Trump's 2024 Policy Platform. Please welcome Peter Navarro.
Good morning. Hey, I want to do a plug for Hillsdale first. Big fan, never visited, watched them from afar for a long time, and I got my doctorate at Harvard. But I'll tell you, if I had college-age children right now, I'd be sending them to Hillsdale before I'd send them to Harvard. So thank you all for your generosity because we need this. We need this. When I walked into the White House in January 2017, if I had encountered a gypsy on the way who read my palm and said, "You're going to be speaking at Hillsdale College event in September of 2024, I would have thought that I might be speaking maybe about macroeconomic forecasting, how's the economy going, maybe about the state of the trade deficit and trade relations, maybe about how to crack down on communist China. Never did I think I'd be talking about what it's like to go to prison in defense of the Constitution. that's where we are right now. So let me talk a little bit about that. I want to start off with a couple of quotations that kind of set the stage for this. Clausewitz, Prussian general, war is politics by other means. War is politics by other means. That's what lawfare is. Lawfare is politics by other means. And then you have the great art of war, Sun Tzu. The supreme art of war is to win without firing a shot, without fighting. It's the Chinese strategy that they're using on us now. But it's also the Democrat lawfare strategy, because the modern version of that is the supreme art of politics is to win an election without having an election, or at least without having your candidate that you want on the ballot to fight their candidate. So that's the context. And what we have here is a situation where the Democrats have weaponized all three branches of government, as well as their own campaign mechanism, in a way which has been designed to keep Donald Trump in particular off the ballot and keep advisors like me from serving him, and then keep other people who might otherwise go into government from doing that. That's basically, it's a very simple kind of agenda. So you ask yourself how they go about that. If you think about the trajectory of lawfare, I think it's fair to say that it began in earnest against Donald Trump before he even took office. I mean, I remember after the election, that transition time in Trump Tower, and one of the great experiences I had was meeting General Mike Flynn, and he was going to be the National Security Council, National Security Advisor at the National Security Council, which is, I mean, in the White House, that's one of the most important elements of government, and we had great plans to finally crack down on China's economic aggression, its military aggression, this, that, and the other thing. And he had what amounted to a cup of coffee in terms of working in the government before they took him out early on. And it was a great loss, not just because we didn't have Mike in there, because the next two guys were disasters and got us off mission, off target, and all of that. And so you saw early on with the Russia hoax, and then throughout the whole administration with the two impeachments, just a concerted effort to the Lilliputians to tie up Gulliver. I mean, that was kind of what they were doing. And then January 6th comes along, and that's created the 4 years of lawfare opportunities, unprecedented in our history, that have been nothing but distract us from the most important things we have to be doing, including dealing with communist China, which seems to be a footnote to a footnote, even in the polling. I mean, if you look at what people are concerned about right now, communist China isn't even a blip on the horizon, when in fact it's in many ways the core source of all of the many economic and foreign policy problems we face. So we are once again distracted as a nation. So just mechanically, the way this works, if you think about what they did to President Trump, you think about what they did to me, there's an interesting analogs there, right? So January 6th, you get a committee that's formed. It's illegally formed, unduly authorized. It has essentially only one mission. Mission wasn't to find out what happened on Capitol Hill that day. We now know it was because Nancy Pelosi didn't provide guards and the FBI sent a bunch of inflammatory instigators up there. That's my view of that. It was simply to gather evidence by strong-arming people with subpoenas so that they could somehow take Trump out for the 2024 election. That's all they were doing. That was it. That's all they got out of it. It was an orchestrated circus, and that's what they came up with. And they did it. They think they did it very well. You could argue they did it very well, but in some sense, what they've done is expose this whole weaponization strategy in a way which has boosted President Trump's fortunes, ironically, to them. But what Lawfare does is when they come at you, like they have with President Trump, it's the first best for them is to put the guy in prison. They thought they could quickly do that. You know, they had 4 years. They figure, okay, you get a special prosecutor. They run through the thing, and they get him in prison, and they don't have to worry about him. Okay, so that's like the first best goal. Well, that didn't work out so well. So they got these other prosecutions going. They got Fonnie Willis in Georgia. They got Alvin Bragg in New York. They got these civil suits going on, and there is collusion between them. Okay, they're coordinating their court dates and this, that, and the other thing in a way which is specifically designed to keep him off the campaign trail. Okay, and then what's going on with President Trump? Well, he's having a raise. Look, this stuff's expensive. I mean, for me, it's $1 million. I mean, think about that, $1 million. For him, it's hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, I'm an economist, right? There's something called the opportunity costs, right? What are those? Well, that's money that could have went to the campaign. Now, I can tell you, like, I had one case and one folks coming at me, and the most I was going to face was a couple of years in prison. If I got 4 or 5 different folks coming at me with 700 years in prison, that might get me a little upset at night. Might be a little, I don't know how Donald Trump does that. Well, I kind of do because I spent 4 years with him. He's amazing, but that's another story for another time. But what it does is it distracts you, or they try to distract him from the mission. So they keep him off the campaign trail. They take away his money. They distract him. Right? What they were trying to do to me simply was strong arm me. You saw a parade of Trump officials who kowtowed, bent their knee, testified when that was a violation of their oath of office. It was a violation of their oath of office. When the president invokes executive privilege, when he did it for me, it wasn't my privilege to waive. By law, I had no right to waive that privilege. It was my duty to do what I did, which was to tell that committee 2 things. 1, pound sand, not doing it. And 2, happy to do it, happy to do it. You simply talk to President Trump and get him to waive the privilege. They did not do that. They didn't even try to do that. And therein lies the rub. So I wound up as the first senior White House official ever charged with a crime that the Department of Justice said for 50 years was not a crime. That by the constitutional separation of powers, folks like me have absolute testimonial immunity because, as the Supreme Court has said repeatedly, executive privilege is necessary for effective presidential decision-making because it provides the, in their words, candor and confidentiality that's required for such effective presidential decision-making. So what is happening now in my world, and you hear, I mean, it's pathetic in a way. It's like you hear Mark Stein talk about 12 years of his life. You hear Mark Moyer come up, talk about, we shouldn't be talking about this. We should be talking about the economy, communist China, foreign policy. So it's like, but what's happening in my case is that it's working its way up. It's in the appeals court now in the District of Columbia. That's as big a cesspool as you can have. It is as big a cesspool as you can have in our justice system. 2/3 of the judges on the appeals court are Democrat appointees, and virtually all of them are rigid ideologues who will make decisions not based on the law, but on their vision of how the law should be made. That's not their job. Not their job. But it will go eventually, I believe, to the Supreme Court, where the question of does Congress have the authority to subpoena a president or White House officials, that will be resolved forever. And if the Supreme Court takes it and resolves the way it should, then what happened to me will be worth it. That's what you do. That's what you do. Thank you. And the other interesting question that came up during the trial was, what's a proper invocation of privilege? We had a very clever by half Judge Amit Mehta. Ah, yes, a man who raised money for the Obama campaign and was duly rewarded. He held an evidentiary hearing, and we brought in like a bulldozer with a big mountain of evidence on the front end of it and things like that, plopped it down, and he said, nope, President didn't invoke executive privilege properly. It's like, huh? Not his role. That's not what the judicial branch is supposed to do. So that was a violation of the separation of powers. So what did he do? They stripped me of every possible defense, and I get to a D.C. jury. Mark Stein talked a little bit about that last night, where 95% votes for Biden in the jury pool, because the jury pool is drawn from the electorate, right? And here we go. Now, at that point, what should have happened was I should have been released pending appeal, but the judge didn't even do that. Right? So I'm going to serve 4 months in prison. It seemed like 4 years. 4 months in prison. And if I win on appeal, it's like tough luck. Irreparable harm. So it's not woe is me. It's like I went to prison so you won't have to. My case illustrates graphically what's wrong exactly with a system where every person involved in putting me in prison was a Democrat. Every single person. Congressman, attorneys at the Department of Injustice, jury, judge, appeals court judges. That's where we're at now. That's why we got to win in November and begin to turn this around, because as Russ Vought said, we are at 11:59, and that's why we do this. All right, thanks. Look forward to your questions.